I was chopping onions when my phone buzzed with a message that shattered my world. It had been a long day at the marketing agency. Deadlines, client calls, endless emails. By the time I got home to my cramped one-bedroom apartment in Austin, all I wanted was a quiet evening. I was making pasta, something simple, cheap. That's all I could afford these days, even with my full-time job. After rent, utilities, and sending money home to my parents every month, there was barely anything left. But that was family, right? You help each other. You sacrifice. The phone vibrated again. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked it up, expecting the usual, Mom asking for a little extra because bills were tight, or Dad wondering if I could cover Kyle's car payment just this once. But it wasn't any of that. It was a video message from Aunt Lisa in the family group chat. I tapped it without thinking, half focused on stirring the sauce. The screen lit up. At first, I thought she'd sent something harmless, maybe an old holiday video or a clip of my cousins being silly. But the video was shaky, like someone had accidentally left their phone recording on a kitchen table. Then I heard it. My mother's voice. Clear as day. Jessica? She should be grateful. She'd be nothing without us. I stopped stirring. The spoon slipped from my hand, clinking against the side of the pot. A low chuckle followed. My father. Pathetic failure, but at least she's good for something, paying our bills. Laughter. The kind of laughter that made my chest tighten, like someone had wrapped their hands around my ribs and squeezed. Then Aunt Lisa, her voice light, casual, like this was the most normal thing in the world. If Jessica ever stops sending money, we'll just guilt her into it. She's too soft to say no. The air left my lungs. My name. Jessica. They weren't talking about someone else. They weren't joking. They were talking about me. I gripped the edge of the stove, trying to ground myself. The bubbling sauce blurred in front of me. My mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe I misheard, maybe it was taken out of context. But I knew better. That kind of cruelty didn't need context. The video cut off abruptly. Before I could react, a notification popped up. This message has been unsent. Aunt Lisa had realized her mistake. She had panicked and deleted it, thinking I hadn't seen it. I stared at the screen, heart racing. My hands trembled, but I didn't cry. I wanted to. God, I wanted to throw my phone across the room, scream, call them, demand to know how they could say those things. After everything I had done. The rent checks. The car payments. The emergency medical bills. I had given up vacations, savings, even my own sense of security, just to make sure they were okay. And this was what they thought of me? Pathetic. A wallet. The words echoed in my head. But I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't scream. I turned the stove off. The pasta sat half-cooked. I sat at the small dining table, phone in my hand, staring at nothing. For the first time, I saw my life clearly. Every I love you from Mom had been followed by a request for money. Every we're so proud of you from Dad had been paired with a Venmo request. And Aunt Lisa, who smiled at me every Thanksgiving, had been the one to say it out loud. We just guilt her into it. The worst part? They were right. I was too soft to say no. I had let them use me. I had let them drain me. Because I thought that was love. But love wasn't supposed to feel like this. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that maybe they were joking, just venting after a hard day. But deep down, I knew. They meant every word. And now, they thought they had gotten away with it. Lisa probably reassured everyone. Asterisk, don't worry, Jessica didn't see it. Everything's fine. Asterisk, they thought I was still in the dark, still their obedient little bank account. Let them think that. Because I wasn't going to react. Not yet. I had a plan. I sat there for what felt like hours, the words circling like vultures in my mind. Jessica should be grateful. Pathetic failure. She's too soft. I pressed the phone to my chest, feeling my heartbeat slow, steady. I wasn't crying. I wasn't panicking. I was calculating. If they wanted me to be the weak one, the desperate one, the one who couldn't say no, they were about to see how wrong they were. What would you have done? Would you have called them right then? Confronted them? Or would you have stayed quiet, like I did, letting them believe they still had control, while you planned your next move? Comment 111 if you think my family is disgusting. After that night, the night I saw the video, everything around me felt different. The same walls of my small Austin apartment, the same low hum of traffic outside my window, the same uneven kitchen table I had bought secondhand, but now, it all felt colder, emptier. I couldn't unhear their voices. My mother's dismissive tone. My father's cruel laugh. Aunt Lisa's smug confidence. They had gutted me with their words, ripped apart everything I thought our family was built on. But as much as it hurt, part of me knew this truth had been there all along. I had just been too blind, or too desperate, to see it. I sat on that worn-out couch, staring at my phone, scrolling through old texts from them. Each "love you" was followed by a request. Each "how are you" quickly pivoted to "can you send a little extra this month?" I thought back to how it all started, how this endless cycle of sacrifice began long before I had a full-time job, back when I was just a kid trying to survive. I was 19 when I left home for college, a state school in Texas, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I thought I was escaping, finally breaking free from the suffocating weight of my family's dysfunction. My parents had always struggled with money. Dad was in and out of jobs, blaming the economy, his bosses, bad luck, never himself. Mom had a revolving door of health issues, though looking back, some of them seemed suspiciously convenient. It was always something, an urgent procedure, a sudden illness, right when the bills piled up. And then there was Kyle, my younger brother, the golden child. He was charming, carefree, and somehow, everything I wasn't. I worked 2 jobs to stay afloat, waitressing at a 24-hour diner off campus, and folding clothes at a retail store in the mall. I juggled shifts between classes, surviving on energy drinks and whatever food the diner let me take home after closing. There were nights I came home so exhausted I collapsed on my bed in my uniform, smelling like fryer grease. But I felt proud. I was doing it. I was building something for myself. Then the calls started. Dad lost his job, again. Mom's medical bills were piling up. They just needed a little help to get through the month. I didn't hesitate. Family needed me. I sent $200 that month, money I didn't have, telling myself it was temporary. But it never stopped. Every month, there was a new crisis. The electricity was about to be shut off. The car broke down. Kyle needed books for school. It was always just this once, but it became every month. I started skipping meals to send them more. I told my friends I was too busy for dinner plans, but the truth was, I couldn't afford to split the check. I remember one night, my sophomore year, sitting in my dorm room, stomach growling, counting the quarters in my desk drawer. I had exactly $2.75, enough for a pack of ramen and a bottle of water from the vending machine. As I was about to head out, my phone buzzed. Mom. Her voice was shaky, panicked. She needed $300 by morning, or they'd be evicted. My heart raced. I transferred the money without thinking, knowing it meant I wouldn't eat for the next few days. That's what love is, right? Sacrifice. After college, I thought things would get better. I got my first real job, an entry-level position at a marketing firm in Austin. I was 24, finally making something close to a livable wage. I moved into my own apartment, a tiny place with creaky floors and a fridge that made strange noises, but it was mine. I should have been excited, but the calls kept coming. Rent's late, Jess. Kyle's car broke down. Lisa's basement flooded. My paychecks disappeared before I could even think about saving. My apartment stayed bare, just a thrift store couch and a mattress on the floor. I didn't buy new clothes, didn't go out, didn't travel. Every time I thought maybe, just maybe, I could start building a life for myself, Mom would call, voice tight with urgency, and I'd transfer the money. 1 month, I felt a sharp pain in my chest that wouldn't go away. It scared me. I thought about going to urgent care, but Dad had called the night before, needing help with rent. I sent the money instead. My health could wait. Their bills couldn't. I remember the summer my friends planned a trip to California, beaches, sunsets, freedom. I saved for months, dreaming about that break. But the week before we left, Mom called. She needed surgery, urgent, she said. I canceled the trip. Later, I found out it was cosmetic work. She had lied to me. There was a night I stood in the parking lot of a grocery store, tears stinging my eyes. My card had declined. I was holding a basket with bread, eggs, and some fruit, basic stuff. I had just sent Kyle money for his car insurance. I left the basket on the floor and walked out, empty-handed. But the worst moments were the holidays. Every Christmas, I made the 3-hour drive home, hoping maybe this year would be different, maybe they'd appreciate me. I'd walk into the house, my arms full of gifts I could barely afford, and see Kyle unwrapping a brand new gaming console. Aunt Lisa would be showing off a designer handbag. Oh, it was on sale, they'd laugh. But I knew better. That was my money. My sacrifices, wrapped up in their happiness. No one ever asked how I was doing. No one noticed when I lost weight from skipping meals or when I pulled double shifts to cover their rent. No thank you. Just more requests. The most painful part was that I kept telling myself it was okay. That I was being a good daughter. That this was what family did. But that video, the one Lisa sent by mistake, made me see it clearly. They had never loved me the way I loved them. I was a wallet. A bank account. A safety net. I thought my sacrifices had built a bridge between us. But all they had done was build a cage around me, a cage they controlled. And now, I was done. Have you ever given everything to someone, only to realize they never valued you? Have you ever sacrificed your happiness, your health, your future, just to keep someone else comfortable? Comment 222 if you've ever felt used by someone you love. The morning after that sleepless night, the night I traced every sacrifice I had made over the years like reopening old wounds, I woke up different. Not stronger, not freer, not yet. But different. Like I had cracked open, and something colder was settling into the spaces where warmth used to be. The light was soft through my window, warming my small Austin apartment, but I didn't feel it. I brewed my coffee, the same way I always did, dark, no sugar, but it tasted bitter in a new way. I stared out at the street below, watching people go about their day. People who, I imagined, had families who loved them, who called to ask how their week was going, not what was left in their bank account. My phone buzzed. I already knew who it was. Mom. Her name glowing on the screen made my chest tighten, the same way it always did. But this time I didn't pick up right away. I let it ring. I let it control me for 1 more minute, then I answered. Her voice was warm, sweet even, the kind of voice you'd expect from a mother who adored her daughter. Hi, baby. I was just thinking about you. How are you doing? It was always like this. Soft words, empty concern, a gentle lead-in to what she really wanted. I played along. I'm okay, just working a lot. She sighed, stretching the pause just enough to make me lean in. I hate that you're always working so hard. You deserve a break, honey. I waited. Then it came, the shift in her tone, the slight tension behind the sweetness. So, listen, we need a little help this month. Kyle's rent is due, and you know how hard things have been lately. Could you send something over today? I stared into my coffee, watching the steam curl up into the air. I could feel my pulse in my ears. The same old request, the same pattern, but this time, something in me snapped into place. I took a breath and asked a question I had never dared ask before. Can Kyle pick up some extra shifts at work? Silence. Just for a second. Then she laughed. But it wasn't the kind of laugh you hear when something's funny. It was sharp, dismissive. A laugh that said, "Oh, sweetheart, you don't get it." "Oh, honey," she said, voice dripping with condescension. "Kyle's not like you. He's not built for hard work. You know that." My grip tightened around the mug. The words rang in my head, louder than they should have been. Kyle's not like you. He's not built for hard work. It was the truth I had known all along, but had refused to accept. I was the workhorse. Kyle was the golden child. I had been grinding myself into the ground, carrying their burdens, while Kyle, my brother, who was only 2 years younger than me, was coddled and protected. My hard work was expected, his comfort was preserved. I forced my voice to stay calm, but there was an edge to it now. I'm working hard too, Mom. I've been working hard since college. Sometimes I need help too. She hesitated. Of course, baby. We appreciate everything you do. Kyle's different. You've always been so strong. We knew you could handle it. There it was again. The compliment wrapped in chains. The praise that shackled me to their needs. You're strong, Jessica. You can take it. You can carry us all. My chest burned, not with sadness, not even with hurt. It was something sharper. Anger. Years of being overlooked, used, taken for granted, all boiling up into a single, searing thought, enough. I wasn't their savior. I wasn't their bank account. I wasn't their backup plan. I was their daughter. I had wanted love, respect, something real, and all I had gotten was debt and exhaustion. For the first time, I wanted to scream at her, to make her understand. I wanted to tell her I saw the video. That I knew everything. That her love was conditional, her concern was fake, and I was done being their fool. But I didn't. I realized that morning that words wouldn't matter. They never had. My pain wouldn't change them. They didn't want me, they wanted what I could give them. So I swallowed the rage and said, I can't help this month. Silence. Longer this time. What do you mean you can't? Her voice was tight now. That syrupy sweetness from before was gone. I have some expenses coming up. I can't send anything. Her breath caught, like I had slapped her. Jessica, this is serious. Kyle will get evicted. Your father is stressed out. We need you. There it was again. We need you, never we love you, never are you okay? I stayed firm. I'm sorry. I can't. She started talking, pleading, guilt-tripping, pulling every manipulative string she knew. But I didn't budge. I just kept saying, I can't. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not with fear. It was something else, adrenaline, relief, power. I had said no. For the first time in my life, I had said no. I stared at my phone, knowing the backlash was coming. Dad would call. Aunt Lisa would text. Kyle might even show up. They'd be angry. They'd try to make me feel like the worst daughter in the world. But I was ready. Because I finally saw them for who they were. And more importantly, I saw myself, someone who deserved better. I deserved peace. I deserved to build a life that wasn't constantly being drained to fill their emptiness. I wasn't their workhorse. I wasn't their bank. I was Jessica. And I was done. Have you ever had that moment, the one where you realize someone you love has never really valued you? Have you ever finally said no, even though you were terrified of what would happen next? Comment 333 if you think I need to cut them off for good. The days that followed my first no were quiet, too quiet. After I hung up on my mother, I expected an explosion. I thought my phone would light up with calls, texts, maybe even voicemails laced with guilt, anger, and threats. But nothing came, at least not right away. That silence was more unnerving than any shouting match. It felt like the calm before a storm, like they were regrouping, whispering about me in the background, figuring out their next move. I knew how they worked. I had spent my whole life studying their patterns, every emotional trick, every manipulation cloaked in love. And I knew they weren't done. They were just getting started. But this time, so was I. The morning after that call, I sat at my kitchen table, staring into my coffee. The bitterness no longer bothered me. If anything, it fueled me. My laptop was open in front of me, and for the first time I wasn't checking work emails or paying their bills. I was severing ties, one transaction at a time. The first thing I did was open a new bank account. A clean slate. Separate from the joint savings account I had stupidly shared with my parents for emergencies. That account had been drained more times than I could count. This one was mine alone. I transferred what little I had left into it, barely $500. Years of working nonstop, and that was all I had to my name. Everything else had gone into their rent, their cars, their so-called emergencies. Not anymore. Next, I canceled the automatic transfers. Every month, like clockwork, money had disappeared from my account into theirs. I had set it up in college, back when I thought helping them would earn their love. Now, I hovered over the disable button for a moment, fingers trembling. This was it, the first real cut. I pressed it. Done. I didn't feel free yet. Not quite. But I felt something shifting, like I had picked up the scissors and made the first snip. Then, I started gathering proof. I dug through emails, bank statements, and text threads, years of financial receipts that told the real story of our family. Not the smiling Christmas photos or the birthday cards signed with love, mom and dad, but the raw numbers. Thousands of dollars, rent, utilities, car payments, medical bills. Every crisis had my name on it. There were messages from my dad, *Jess, can you cover this month's phone bill? Just until I'm back on my feet. *. From my mother, *baby, your brother's car broke down again. Can you help? He's so stressed. *. From Aunt Lisa, * sweetheart, I hate to ask, but my roof is leaking, and we're tapped out. You're such a blessing to this family. *. Each one was a tiny knife to the heart, but I saved them all. Screenshots. PDFs, bank transfers. A digital graveyard of my sacrifices. I needed this. Not because I planned to take them to court or demand repayment, they had nothing to give me. I needed it for myself. I needed to see, in black and white, the evidence that I wasn't crazy. That I hadn't imagined the weight of their demands. That my exhaustion had roots. I was preparing for a different kind of battle. The one where I took my life back. But as I built my case in secret, I kept up the performance. When Mom texted, I replied, *love you, Mom. * when Dad called to check in, I answered with my usual, *sure, Dad. Everything's good here. *. Aunt Lisa sent me a recipe for some casserole I'd never make. I replied with a heart emoji. They thought I was still their Jessica, the dependable one, the provider, the soft-hearted fool who would always come through. They had no idea that every love you was laced with quiet rage. That every emoji was a countdown. I wasn't their puppet anymore. I was cutting the strings. Then, I stumbled upon something that nearly made me vomit. Kyle's car, the one they had begged me to help him buy when he was 22, right after he dropped out of college, wasn't just his. My name was on the paperwork. I had co-signed the loan. I had completely forgotten. Or maybe I had forced myself to forget because it was just another burden I had accepted without question. I called the financing company. The woman on the other end was polite but firm. I was still legally tied to the vehicle. If Kyle missed payments, I was responsible. If he totaled it, my name would be on the line. I sat there, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Of course. Of course, they had left this detail out when they handed me the keys to their problems. But this time I wasn't going to fix it for them. I started the paperwork to remove my name. It would take time, and Kyle would need to agree to refinance the car under his name alone. I knew he'd be furious. I could already hear his voice, calling me selfish, ungrateful. But I didn't care. I was peeling my name off everything they had attached it to, reclaiming every piece of myself they had stolen. The next week was a blur of preparations. Each small act, canceling a payment, signing a form, felt like pushing a brick off my chest. I didn't sleep much, but when I did, it was different. No longer the restless sleep of someone afraid their phone might ring with another demand. It was the sleep of someone slowly, carefully building a way out. I started picturing my life without them. A future where my paycheck stayed in my hands. Where I could buy groceries without holding my breath at the register. Where I could plan a vacation without waiting for my mother to fake an emergency. I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers, not my friends. This was mine, my quiet revolution. The messages from my family kept coming, like nothing had changed. Mom, *hi baby, how's work? Love you. *. Dad, *, just checking in. How's our girl? *. Kyle sent a meme about football. Lisa asked if I'd seen the new sale at Macy's. Every text was a reminder, they still thought I was theirs. That I was still holding them up. But they had no idea. Each reply was a lie wrapped in politeness. Each day brought me closer to freedom. They thought I was still their little puppet. They had no idea I was holding the scissors. Have you ever had to play along with someone who was using you, just to buy yourself time? Have you ever smiled through the pain, knowing that soon, you'd finally be free? Comment 444 if you can't wait for my revenge. Deadline day arrived like any other, quiet, unassuming. The sun stretched over the Austin skyline as I sipped my coffee, staring out of the window. The world outside moved forward, but inside, I was holding my breath. I knew what was coming. The end of the month was always the same. Rent was due. Bills were piling up back home, though it was never really home, was it? My family had turned the calendar into a countdown clock, and I was their safety net. When the first of the month approached, my phone would light up like clockwork. And right on cue, it buzzed. Mom. I let it ring once, twice. I took another sip of coffee before answering, keeping my voice even, like nothing had changed. Hey, baby, she cooed, soft and sweet, like honey laced with poison. How are you? I was just thinking about you. I knew what was coming. She always buttered me up first. Then came the ask. Sure enough, after a few more empty pleasantries, her tone shifted. So, rent's due. Could you send it over today, sweetie? You know how things get tight around here. I closed my eyes. My fingers curled tighter around the mug. Every part of me wanted to fall back into old patterns, say yes, apologize, make it easy for them. But that girl was gone. I can't help this month, I said, my voice calm, steady. Silence. The kind that feels like it's swallowing you whole. What do you mean you can't? Her voice sharpened, the warmth slipping away. I have my own expenses. I can't send anything. Another pause, this one heavier, like she was trying to process the impossible, that I had dared to say no. Her tone turned brittle, desperate. Jessica, this isn't funny. We're counting on you. Kyle can't. I can't help this month, I repeated, cutting her off. She sputtered, then launched into the guilt. You know your brother can't cover this on his own. We're a family. We help each other. That word, family, had been their weapon for years. But it was dull now. It didn't cut the same way. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't, I said one last time. And then I hung up. The calls started flooding in within minutes. Mom called again. Then Dad. Then Lisa. The text poured in, pleading, demanding, accusing. Mom, you're putting us in a terrible position. Don't do this. Dad, you know we've always done everything for you. This is how you repay us? Lisa, sweetheart, what's wrong? Your mom's really upset. Please just send the rent. I watched the screen light up again and again. I didn't respond. I let the panic grow on their end. Then Kyle's message came through, WTF Jess. Are you serious? You're screwing all of us. You better fix this. Fix this. That's all I had ever been to them, the fixer. The solution. The bank. Not anymore. I blocked them all. One by one, their numbers disappeared from my screen. Mom. Dad. Lisa. Kyle. The group chat. Every link to them, gone. The silence that followed was louder than anything I'd ever heard. That night, I slept better than I had in years. But the fallout came fast. 2 days later, Kyle's car was repossessed. I heard it from a mutual friend back in town. He had apparently stormed out of the house, screaming as they towed it away. He called me from another number, rage spilling through the phone. You ruined my fucking life, Jess, he spat. They took my car. Do you even care? I hung up without a word. Blocked that number, too. A week later, Mom called from a different phone, leaving a voicemail. Her voice was strained, desperate. Jessica, please. We got an eviction notice. We don't know what to do. Call me back, baby. Please. Dad's number had been shut off entirely. I later realized I had been paying for their family phone plan. Without me, it was gone. Lisa left a message that was part begging, part scolding. Jessica, honey, this is getting out of hand. Your mom is in tears. We're family. You can't just cut us off like this. We need you. Call me back. I didn't. Instead, I sat down at my laptop. I typed out a long email, attaching every receipt, every bank statement, every transaction over the years. The subject line read, The Truth. The message was simple. Here is a record of everything I've given you. Every rent payment. Every car payment. Every emergency. Every time you needed me, and I showed up. I've done my part. I'm done being your lifeline. You will figure it out, like I did, without anyone holding you up. Just like I did. Without you. Don't contact me again. I hit send. I stared at the screen for a long time afterward. My heart was racing, but not from fear. From something else. Power. Freedom. For the first time in 27 years, I chose me. And it felt damn good. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. I wondered what was happening in their house, if Kyle was blaming Mom, if Dad was yelling at Lisa, if they were all sitting together, finally realizing that the well had dried up. I'll probably never know. And that's okay. I used to think cutting them off would destroy me. That without them, I would have nothing. But I wasn't nothing. I was everything. Without them, I was finally free. Have you ever had to walk away from people you loved, even when it hurt, because you knew it was the only way to save yourself? Comment 555 if you think this is the revenge they deserved. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of my new apartment, warm and golden, casting a glow over the space that finally felt like mine. It had been 6 months since I cut my family off, 6 months since I chose myself. And for the first time in my life, I woke up without the weight of someone else's needs pressing down on my chest. I stretched out on my couch, no longer secondhand, no longer sagging from years of wear. This one was brand new. I had picked it out myself, paid for it with my own money, money I had kept for me. The walls were no longer bare, no longer reminders of every dollar I had sent home instead of building my own life. There were photos from my solo trip to New York City, my first vacation, my first real taste of freedom. Shots of me standing in Times Square, grinning under bright lights. Me on the Brooklyn Bridge, the wind catching my hair. Me in a tiny cafe, sipping coffee that wasn't instant and didn't come with a side of guilt. That trip was more than sightseeing. It was a reclamation. I had always dreamed of visiting New York. For years, I had saved scraps of money, hoping someday I could go. But every time I got close, Mom's emergency would pop up. Dad would need help covering something. Kyle's car would break down. And every single time, I put their comfort ahead of my own dreams. But not this time. I had booked the ticket 2 months after sending that final email, the one that laid out every dollar I had ever given them, every sacrifice, every stolen piece of my future. I hadn't heard much from them since then. A few desperate attempts to reach out at first, different numbers, fake sweetness laced with resentment, but I blocked them all. Then, silence. At first, that silence felt foreign. Like something was missing. But as the days turned into weeks, it started to feel like peace. Kyle moved back into my parents' house after his car was repossessed. The golden child who had coasted through life on my sacrifices was now working part-time at a gas station. He had to sell his gaming console, the same one I had basically paid for, to cover his bills. Mom and Dad were still in that same rundown house, still struggling. From what I heard through distant relatives, Dad picked up side jobs, and Mom leaned on neighbors for favors. Their landlord had given them one last chance after the eviction scare, but the walls were closing in. They had leaned on me so long that they had forgotten how to stand on their own. But none of them had called me again. Not once. That was the part that stung the most in those early weeks, the proof that their love had always been transactional. Without my money, I had no value to them. But now, months later, I didn't feel that sting anymore. I felt relief. I started saving for the first time in my life, really saving. Every paycheck no longer evaporated the moment it hit my account. I opened a separate fund, one labeled Future Agency. It was a dream I had buried years ago, back when I first got into marketing. I wanted to run my own social media agency, help small businesses grow their brand, build something creative and lasting. I had pushed that dream aside so many times I almost forgot it was mine. But now, with every deposit into that fund, it was becoming real. I rented this new apartment, bigger, brighter. Nothing extravagant, but it felt luxurious to me. I filled it with things I loved. Soft blankets. Candles that smelled like lavender and vanilla. Art prints that made me smile. Every little thing was a symbol, proof that I was finally living my life, not funding someone else's. One night, I was sitting on my balcony, sipping wine, watching the city lights. My phone buzzed with a message from a friend I hadn't seen in years. "Hey, Jess. You seem so happy lately. We should catch up soon." Happy. I stared at that word for a long time. Because it was true. I wasn't wealthy. I wasn't wildly successful, yet. But I was free. And that freedom felt better than any dollar I had ever sent home. There was no guilt anymore. No second guessing. I had loved my family, truly, deeply. I had given them everything I had. But I realized now that love isn't measured in dollars. Love is respect. They never respected me. And without respect, there was no love. That truth had nearly broken me. But instead, it had set me free. Sometimes, I wondered if Mom sat in her kitchen, staring at her phone, thinking about calling me. If Dad regretted the jokes he had made about me being their wallet. If Kyle ever realized that his easy life had been built on my suffering. But I didn't need to know. Because their opinions no longer defined me. Choosing myself didn't make me a bad daughter. It made me a whole person. I had spent my entire life trying to earn their love. I thought that if I gave enough, if I bled enough, they would finally see me. But now, I saw myself. And that was enough. I finished my wine that night, breathing in the cool Austin air, and smiled to myself. They had tried to break me. But I had built something stronger from the pieces. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't cutting someone down. It's standing so tall, they can't reach you anymore. Have you ever chosen yourself, even when it meant walking away from people you loved? Have you ever realized that peace is more valuable than approval? Comment 666 if you believe choosing yourself is the ultimate victory. Looking back on everything, I realized that walking away from my family wasn't just about cutting off financial support. It was about reclaiming my identity. For so long, I thought love meant giving everything, even when it hurt, even when it left me with nothing. I believed that if I sacrificed enough, they would finally see my worth. But what I learned is that real love doesn't demand you empty yourself. Real love doesn't see you as a resource. It sees you as a person. Choosing myself wasn't easy. The guilt was overwhelming at first, the fear that I was abandoning them, that I was being selfish. But that guilt wasn't mine to carry. It was a weight they had placed on me, a tool they had used to keep me small. Once I let it go, I saw clearly, I deserved respect. I deserved peace. I deserved a life that was mine. And I know I'm not alone. So many of us, especially daughters, sisters, caregivers, are taught that our value lies in what we can give. We grow up believing that our love is proven through sacrifice. But I want you to hear this, you are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for refusing to carry the weight of others when it's crushing you. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for what you provide. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like Jessica, trapped in a cycle of giving until you had nothing left, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been used by someone you love? Have you ever had to walk away to save yourself? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. You are not alone. Let's create a space where we lift each other up, where we remind each other that we deserve better. And if you want more stories like this, stories of resilience, strength, and taking back control, make sure to subscribe to AGS Stories. Every week, I'll be here, sharing stories that prove we are stronger than they think. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join this community of survivors, people who chose to stand tall, even when others tried to keep them down. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's struggling to put themselves first, share this video with them. You might just give them the courage they need to break free. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't anger. It's living the life they never thought you could.